A Nimitz-class aircraft carrier costs about $13 billion. It's the size of 3 football fields stacked end to end. 5,000 sailors live on it. And the entire purpose of those $13 billion is to put exactly 90 aircraft into a fight. Not 80, not 100, not 50, 90. That number didn't come from somebody picking a round figure off a whiteboard. It came from 40 years of trying every other number and finding out, the hard way, why none of them work. This is the story of why a Navy carrier carries 90 aircraft, and why the moment you try to put on one more or take off one less, the most expensive warship ever built becomes worse at the only job it has. Let's get specific. A Nimitz-class carrier has 4.5 acres of flight deck with about 1 million cubic feet of hangar space below it. The design accommodates up to 90 airframes. In practice, a deployed carrier air wing today operates with between 64 and 75 aircraft. The mix is roughly the same every time. 4 squadrons of F/A-18 Super Hornets, the single-seat E model for pure fighter missions, the 2-seat F model where the backseater runs the targeting and weapons, about 44 jets total, 5 to 7 EA-18G Growlers for electronic warfare. They jam enemy radars and shut down air defense networks so the strike fighters can survive. 4 to 5 E-2D Hawkeyes, propeller-driven, slow, and carrying the most sophisticated airborne early warning radar the Navy has ever built. The carrier's eyes for everything beyond the horizon. About 19 MH-60R and MH-60S Seahawk helicopters. Anti-submarine warfare, search and rescue, combat support. Logistics around the strike group. 2 CMV-22B Osprey tilt rotors for moving high-priority cargo and people between the carrier and shore. That's the air wing. 6 different mission categories, none of them optional. So why is the design built for 90 when nobody deploys with 90? Because 90 isn't your starting roster. It's your surge capacity. It's the number the carrier can absorb when something goes wrong. And something always goes wrong. Here's the framework. There are 6 engineering constraints that decide how many aircraft a carrier can carry. Every one of them points to the same answer. Constraint 1, spotting geometry. How many aircraft you can physically store on the flight deck and in the hangar bay without breaking flight operations. Constraint 2, mission mix. How many specialized aircraft types you need on board to cover every combat role the carrier might face. Constraint 3, sortie rate. How fast the catapults and arresting gear can actually cycle aircraft in and out of flight operations. Constraint 4, logistics. How much fuel, ordnance, parts, and crew berthing the ship can carry before the support chain breaks. Constraint 5, maintenance ratio. How many aircraft are actually flyable at any given moment, given that roughly 1 in 3 is always down for repairs. Constraint 6, reserve capacity. How much margin you build in for losses, surges, weather diversions, and the war you didn't plan for. Push any of these constraints harder, and the system breaks somewhere else. Pull any of them back, and the carrier becomes worse at its job. The number where all 6 lines cross, where the design balances against every limit at the same time, is 90. Start with the first constraint, physical space. Half the aircraft on a carrier live on the flight deck. The other half are stored in the hangar bay 1 level down. You move them between the 2 spaces through 4 aircraft elevators, each big enough to carry 2 fighters at a time. Moving aircraft around on a packed deck is called spotting, and it's a puzzle that has to be solved every single hour of flight operations. Each plane needs space to start its engines, space to taxi to the catapult, space to recover after a landing, space for ordnance handlers to load weapons, space for the maintenance crew to work the engines. Pack the deck too tight and none of that works. Aircraft can't move, crew can't reach them safely. The whole operation grinds to a halt before the first jet launches. The Navy has studied this for 40 years with operational experience and computer simulation. The maximum you can spot on a Nimitz-class flight deck without breaking operations is around 45 to 50 aircraft. The hangar bay below holds another 40 to 45. Add them together, 90 airframes. The ceiling isn't a budget figure, it's geometry. 1 more aircraft on board and you can't run flight operations safely. 1 less, and you've wasted deck space that cost about $10 million per square foot to build. The second hard limit comes from a different direction. If a carrier can carry 90 aircraft, why doesn't the Navy build a bigger one that carries 150? Because the limit on a carrier isn't how many planes you can fit, it's how many sorties you can generate per day. A sortie is one mission flight. The aircraft takes off, flies its mission, comes back, gets refueled and reloaded, and goes out again. The Ford class was specifically designed to generate 160 sorties per day in sustained operations, with a surge ceiling of 270. Sortie rate is bounded by three things: how fast the catapults can launch, how fast the arresting gear can recover aircraft, and how fast the deck crew can turn an aircraft around between flights. A Nimitz-class carrier has 4 steam catapults. A Ford class has 4 electromagnetic ones, EMALS. Each catapult can fire about 1 launch every 60 seconds under ideal conditions. The arresting gear cycle is similar. Do the math. The absolute ceiling on combined launches and recoveries is around 300 per day, with a crew that doesn't sleep. Realistic sustained operations land at half that. Past about 90 airframes, you're not adding combat capability. You're adding aircraft that sit on the deck because the catapults can't launch them fast enough to matter. The bottleneck isn't airframes, it's how fast the deck can move them. Even if you could launch more aircraft, the carrier physically can't feed more of them than it already has. Start with fuel. A Nimitz-class carrier holds about 3 million gallons of JP5 aviation fuel. That sounds like a lot. It isn't. An F/A-18 burns through 1,500 gallons on an average mission. 90 aircraft flying 1.5 sorties per day burn through 200,000 gallons every 24 hours. Which means the carrier needs replenishment from a tanker every 2 to 3 weeks just to keep the air wing flying. Add 10 more aircraft and the timeline collapses. The carrier becomes a slave to the fuel ship. Then comes ordnance. Deep in the bowels of the ship, behind heavily armored bulkheads, the carrier stores its weapons. Air-to-air missiles, air-to-ground missiles, joint direct attack munitions, sidewinders, AMRAAMs, Mark 83 and 84 bombs. The magazines have finite volume. The handlers who move weapons up to the flight deck have finite time. The elevators that lift ordnance through 9 decks of armored compartments have finite capacity. Every one of those numbers was sized for 90 aircraft, and every aircraft needs a pilot. Every pilot needs sleep, food, a bunk. The carrier's berthing was sized for the crew the air wing actually needs. Push the airframe count past 90, and within a week the ship runs out of places to put people. Fuel, ordnance, berthing, all 3 sized for the same number, 90. There's one more number that decides why it's 90. It's the one almost nobody outside naval aviation talks about openly. Out of any group of modern military aircraft, only a fraction are flyable on any given day. The rest are down for inspections, parts replacement, software updates, or repairs. In the US Navy, the target full mission capable rate for the F/A-18 fleet is around 70%. The actual achieved rate has been closer to 55 to 60% in recent years. Translate that, out of 44 Super Hornets on a carrier, about 25 to 30 are actually combat ready on any given morning. The rest are mid-repair, mid-inspection, or waiting for parts that flew out from shore on the last logistics flight. If you want to put 20 fighters in the air for a strike package, you need to start with 44 to have a reasonable chance of getting 20. That isn't pessimism. That's the lived reality of every air wing commander since aircraft got complicated. The 90 airframe design isn't generous. It's just enough. It bakes in the assumption that 1 aircraft in 3 is broken right now, and the carrier still has to function as a fighting force. Strip that ratio away. Assume every aircraft works 100% of the time, and the air wing only needs 50 fighters. Nobody ever has that luxury. Put all 6 constraints in one place. Spotting geometry says 90. Mission mix says 90. Sortie rate says 90. Logistics say 90. Maintenance ratio says 90. Reserve capacity says 90. Every single constraint converges on the same answer, not because the engineers liked the number, because every other number breaks something. A carrier sized for 60 aircraft can't absorb a surge or sustain losses without losing combat power. A carrier sized for 120 runs out of fuel, runs out of bombs, runs out of bunks, and parks aircraft uselessly on the deck because the catapults can't launch them fast enough. 90 is where the design balances against every limit at the same time. There's no other answer that works. Most of the design choices on a Nimitz-class carrier are arguments that started in the 1960s and got resolved by the time the first ship of the class was launched in 1972. The 90 aircraft number is one of those resolved arguments. 40 years of operations have proven it right. Every successor design, Ford-class included, has kept it. Not because of tradition, because the math doesn't change. 6 constraints, 1 number. That's why a $13 billion warship designed in the 1960s is still the deadliest naval platform on the planet today.